Welcome to the Daily Dispatch. First up, clouds of political tension are rising over Taiwan as China sends a record number of fighter jets there. Next on the Dispatch, we'll take you to Afghanistan, where a number of aid organizations have decided to halt the operations in Afghanistan following the ban on female participation in NGOs. Lastly, we're giving you updates on Russia-Ukraine war after Putin saying he is ready for talks with all the parties involved. We're here to give you the news and to help you infer the world around you. I'm Tayyaba Nisar Khan, and here is your Daily Dispatch. China has sent a record number of fighter jets towards Taiwan. On December 26, 2022, Taiwan's Ministry of National Defense reported that China's People's Liberation Army Air Force carried out the highest number of aerial sorties towards Taiwan in a day. As many as 71 Chinese aircrafts were part of these strike drills, in addition to the 7 Chinese naval vessels that participated in these drills. China's recent move is being termed by analysis as the new normal. China has drastically scaled up the number of sorties since the visit of Nancy Pelosi, Speaker U.S. House of Representatives, to Taiwan earlier in August this year. China has used drills and sorties as a sign of protest to visits by the foreign dignitaries to Taiwan. In addition to other platforms, China has increased its use of multiple variants of drones for surveillance and reconnaissance purposes. The amount of these sorties also suggests that the median line dividing mainland China with Taiwan is virtually over. Now, analysts believe higher peacetime surveillance helps map Taiwanese air defense networks and capabilities, and corrodes Taiwan's outnumbered aerial and naval assets. China has blamed the United States and Taiwan for growing these tensions. Recently, the United States authorized up to $10 billion worth of military aid over the next 5 years, including the sale of spare parts worth $428 million to Taiwan. The measure is aimed at improving Taiwan's military capability to prevent a forceful takeover by China. Such developments are considered escalatory by China, terming any de jure declaration of independence by Taiwan as a precursor to China's actual conflict. The Afghan Ministry of Economy issued a ban on female participation on NGO workforce on Friday, following which a number of humanitarian organizations have decided to suspend their operations in the country. Organizations like the Norwegian Refugee Council, Save the Children, CARE, and others have opted to close operations, as access to children and women is compromised in the absence of female staff. Now, aid workers say that female workers are essential in a country where rules and cultural customs largely prevent the male workers from delivering aid to female beneficiaries. Afghan Ministry of Economy has claimed that the ban is in response to non-compliance with the Islamic dress code in the workplace. Students and teachers across the country were already protesting the ban on higher education for women. With this additional restriction on women's participation in public spaces, the country faces a loss of trained and capable human resources in the aid sector. After the Taliban took control of Kabul, Afghanistan's economy faced a massive blow when the country's assets were frozen after sanctions were imposed. This led to an economic and health crisis, among other essential services, for the public, making it nearly impossible to pay doctors and internally provide supplies. Humanitarian organizations remained vital in filling the gap in provision of the essential services, particularly in healthcare service provision, an arrangement that continues to date. While major organizations like the United Nations have not received a notification to send their female workers home, the impact on contracting partners and local NGOs that help implement the large programs in targeted communities can spill over, affecting the work of entire humanitarian and development sector. Afghan economy relies heavily on the capital that humanitarian operations bring into the country. Experts opine that a shrinkage of these operations and associate spending can be catastrophic for the country's already strained economy and might even exacerbate the security vulnerabilities of the country and the region at large. With a harsh winter at its heels, an aid-dependent economy, and security concerns that span not just the region, but the world, any further blow to the fragile economic setup can quickly devolve into a complex crisis, with far-reaching impacts for the regional security. On to some updates on Russia-Ukraine war now. In an interview aired on Moscow's Rossiya 1 television, President of Russia, Vladimir Putin, stated that he is ready to negotiate with all parties involved to end the 10-month-long conflict and to find the acceptable solutions. He blamed the West for trying to tear apart historical Russia. Responding to his statement, advisor to Ukraine's president, Mikhailo Podolyak, tweeted that Russia doesn't want negotiations, is evading responsibility, and carried out an unprovoked attack against Ukraine. Earlier, the US also rebuked calls of President Putin to end the war, saying these calls were insincere and had zero indication of negotiations. As Russia calls for peace, fierce fighting continues to Ukrainian towns of Kharkiv, Zaporizhia, and Kramatorsk. In another update, Russia's Deputy Prime Minister, Alexander Novak, stated that Russia is ready to resume gas supplies to Europe via the Yamal-Europe gas pipeline, and that European market remains relevant due to an increase in their energy demands. The statement comes despite Europe's reducing reliance on Russian energy, which sharply declined from 27.6% in the first quarter of 2022 to 15.1% in the third quarter of 2022, falling by 6.1 billion euros. It also comes in the back of European Union slamming a price cap on seaborne gas from Russia to EU. Gas in Yamal-Europe pipeline, which runs from Russia through Belarus and Poland to Germany, was suspended in early May by Russian-owned energy giant Gazprom, only a day after Ukraine reduced the natural gas flow across its territory into Europe, and blamed interference by Russian troops for this. The resumption of gas supplies from Yamal-Europe gas pipeline, despite European Union's price cap on the seaborne Russian gas, could signal Russia's willingness to appease Europe over energy, and hinting towards openness for negotiations. With Putin's calls for talks, its dismissal by Ukraine, and the bomb strikes continuing, it is unlikely that the two will sit down for dialogue soon. Now, winds of climate change are being felt across the world as a severe winter storm called the bomb cyclone wreaks deadly havoc in the US, the worst hit being Buffalo City in New York State. 50 fatalities have been reported so far, and close to 2 million people have faced power outages, as the forecast warn around 60% of the US could be affected by the storm. Meanwhile, large parts of Japan have seen heavy storms in recent days as well, with northeastern Japan receiving more than average snowfall, killing 17 people, and leaving thousands of homes without electricity. From droughts to unprecedented rains, extreme climate-related disasters have been a constant feature this year. East Africa continued to experience below-average rainfall for the fourth consecutive year, the longest in 40 years, while Greenland received rain instead of snow for the first time. In South Asia, Pakistan and India went through a heat wave in March and April, followed by extensive flooding in August, affecting 7.9 million in Pakistan and displacing 33 million here, with 1/3 of the country inundated. We'll now take you to Paris, which is witnessing protests against racism. A suspect detained over the killing of 3 Kurdish people in France a few days ago has said that he has pathological hatred of foreigners, calling all non-Europeans as migrants or foreigners, and that he always wanted to kill them. 3 Kurdish people were killed by a gunman in Paris as they were holding a cultural event and preparing to commemorate the anniversary of 3 murdered Kurdish activists in 2013. The Kurdish community blamed the security forces for not doing enough to prevent these attacks and demands the incident to be called a terrorist act. Although the investigation so far has not revealed any party affiliation or ideological inspiration of the attacker, it has once again shed light on anti-immigrant politics and rhetoric of some right-wing parties in Europe, like General Identity in France, AfD, Alternative for Germany in Germany, and Brothers of Italy, all run on anti-immigrant platforms and show skepticism about EU and economic integration. And lastly, Pusha Kamal Dahal, a former Maoist leader, is set to become the Prime Minister of Nepal for the 3rd time. He served briefly as Prime Minister in 2008 and 9, and again in 2016 and 17. Dahal, who still goes by his nom de guerre, Parchanda, meaning fierce, led a Maoist insurgency for a decade in Nepal, which killed 17,000 people and ended more than 200-year-long monarchy. A United Nations-assisted peace process ended the insurgency in 2006, while the monarchy was abolished 2 years later. However, Nepal has been gripped by political instability, as it has seen 10 governments since 2008, with Dahal heading a coalition government of multiple parties and agreeing to make way for its main coalition partner, the Unified Marxist-Leninist Party. After completing the first half of the 5-year term, It is feared political uncertainty will continue to mark his tenure, at a time when inflation touches 8% in Nepal, imports increase, and foreign exchange reserves dwindle. That's all, folks. We'd be happy to receive your feedback and suggestions. We'll be back tomorrow with more bite-sized news that keeps you up to date with what's going on in the country, the region, and the globe. I'm Tayyaba Nisar Khan, and this was your Daily Dispatch.